My dad always said dreams belong to the lucky, not the practical. That night, his words weren't loud nor harsh, yet they made me feel as if someone had quietly taken away the last pieces of pride and confidence I had left. "You'll never make money online," Ava Dad said, not even looking up from his steak. "People like us work with our hands, not with whatever nonsense you think happens behind a screen." Across the table, my brother Ethan snorted. "Stop dreaming, sis. Not everyone's built to be the next Silicon Valley genius." I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that silence was safer than hope. So instead, I reached for my laptop. The clink of silverware filled the air. The smell of roasted vegetables mixed with my dad's cologne, strong, overbearing like him. My mother smiled tightly, the kind of smile that tries to keep the peace but fails halfway through. "Let's just eat," she murmured, her eyes flicking toward me, pleading. I opened my laptop slowly, the glow from the screen washing over the table. Numbers, charts, my small, fragile dream taking digital form right there between the mashed potatoes and my dad's disappointment. Ethan leaned over, curiosity flickering across his smirk. "What are you even doing? Still on that ClickNest thing? That's your little side project, right?" I didn't answer. I clicked into the dashboard, my heartbeat syncing with the loading bar. The page opened. $9 million. Account balance. 9,004,321. For a second, no one breathed. My dad's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Ethan's grin collapsed into disbelief. My mother. She dropped her spoon. The metal hit the plate with a sharp ringing note that cut through the silence. I looked up, finally meeting my dad's eyes. "I guess the internet isn't so useless after all." He didn't respond. The lines around his mouth tightened. Pride, shame, I couldn't tell. For once he looked small at his own table. Ethan stammered, "That can't be real, how?" I repeated, closing the laptop softly. By not listening. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. For the first time, my dad's certainty had nowhere to land. After dinner, I sat alone on the back porch, the Texas night humming with cicadas. The same stars that once felt unreachable now seemed close enough to touch. I remembered every word they'd said, every warning, every laugh. They had meant to break me, but they'd only carved out space for something stronger. 2 years earlier, I'd been working night shifts at a cafe pouring lattes for people who carried laptops full of dreams I didn't yet understand. I used to watch them and wonder what it would feel like to be creating instead of serving. That's when ClickNest was born, on the back of a napkin, in between spilled espresso and exhaustion. I spent nights coding in secret, whispering lines of JavaScript like prayers. During the day, I listened to podcasts about people who made it, half believing, half resenting them. My brother mocked every update. My dad warned me to grow up before the world teaches you how. Turns out the world did teach me, but not in the way he expected. The money didn't come overnight. The first year I made less than a barista's tip jar. But what I built had roots. ClickNest started as a place for small creators, artists, writers, dreamers, to sell their work without middlemen. It grew because people believed in people again, and now that belief had a number: 9 million. My phone buzzed. A notification: Tokyo Venture Syndicate investment approved. $500,000 on top of everything I'd already built. I smiled at the irony. The same man who told me I'd never make money online now sat 5 feet away, stunned by proof that I had. Inside, I heard dishes clattering, Ethan's voice sharp and defensive. "She just got lucky. 1 viral post, that's all." My dad didn't answer. His silence spoke louder than his pride ever could. Out there on that porch, I promised myself one thing: I wouldn't spend another day seeking validation from people too afraid to evolve. I didn't need their permission to grow anymore. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase, laptop, notebooks, one photo of my mom smiling before life hardened her edges. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Thank you for dinner. I'm building something bigger than a family business. I'm building a future." The car engine hummed beneath me as I pulled out of the driveway, leaving the house, the criticism, and the safe life behind. That night's dinner had been the end of something, but also the spark of everything that would follow. The betrayal. The comeback. The legacy. I didn't know it yet, but that spoon hitting the plate was the sound of my old life shattering and the first echo of my new beginning. The bus ride out of Austin smelled like old leather and freedom. I sat by the window, forehead pressed to the glass, watching the city shrink behind me, every street corner, every coffee shop, every reminder of who I used to be. I didn't know where I was going yet. I only knew I was done being small. When I opened my laptop, the numbers still stared back at me. 9 hours 04 hours, 321. It wasn't just a balance, it was a mirror. Proof that I had created something real out of nothing but late nights and stubborn belief. The same belief everyone else called foolish. I had built ClickNest for people like me, the ones no one believed in. Creators who wanted to turn their work into income without begging corporations for permission. My phone buzzed. A message from Leo. Leo, Tokyo deal cleared. Congrats, boss. We're funded. Emmy boss. I still feel like a waitress with Wi-Fi. Leo. Then you're the richest waitress in Texas. Leo had been with me since ClickNest was nothing more than code written between espresso shifts. A dropout from MIT, he believed in impact before income. We were both broke, both desperate, and both too naive to know how impossible our dream really was. Now, impossibility had a dollar sign. By the time I reached the small apartment I'd rented in San Francisco, the Pacific air was thick with fog. I walked into a space barely big enough for a desk, a bed, and a dream. Leo was already there, surrounded by whiteboards scribbled with equations and phrases like think big, start small, build assets, not just income, do and money will start chasing you. Jim Rohn's rules. Leo said, nodding toward the board. You know the money rules of the rich. The way I see it, most people chase cash. We're going to build value. I smiled. Value doesn't pay rent. Yet. That night we worked until the light from the window turned to shadow. I stared at the numbers on the screen, imagining what they could become, thousands of creators uploading, selling, building their own freedom. Leo leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. You ever think about what made you do this, Ava? Like, the real reason I paused. Because I was tired of asking permission. He nodded slowly. Good answer. By dawn, the city was waking up. We were still coding, fueled by cold pizza and caffeine. For the first time, I felt alive, not because I had money, but because I had purpose. The next few weeks blurred into a pattern of obsession. Meetings with lawyers, calls with investors, 1,000 decisions that could make or break everything. Every yes came with 3 new no's, but each rejection built muscle. We started hiring. Not big names, not fancy resumes, just hungry people. Freelancers from Manila, designers from Nairobi, writers from Mexico City, they all shared the same spark I once hid, the desire to create something that mattered. The Tokyo Venture Syndicate wired the first half of their investment, $500,000. It felt surreal watching the transfer hit our account. I used to count tips at midnight. Now I was approving payroll. That night, Leo and I stood on the balcony of our new office, a converted warehouse by the water. To the start of something we'll tell our grandkids about, he said, raising a glass of cheap champagne. I laughed. If we survive the taxes. He grinned. Think like the rich Ava. They don't just earn. They build. This is the foundation. But even as I smiled, a quiet unease crept in. The bigger we got, the more eyes were on us. Every headline that called me the girl who defied her dad felt like both a badge and a burden. My brother's texts grew colder. My dad stopped replying altogether. One night I got a voicemail. It was my mom. Your dad saw the article in Bloomberg. He didn't say much, just that you're reckless. But I could tell he's scared. You're proving him wrong, Ava. And he doesn't know how to love that yet. I listened to it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I saved it. Not as motivation, but as a reminder success doesn't heal everything. It just shows you who was willing to stay when you changed. 3 months later. ClickNest hit 1 million users. I should have felt unstoppable. But instead, I felt pressure building like the air before a storm. Growth meant scrutiny. Journalists wanted numbers. Investors wanted control. That's when the first offer came in. A corporate giant Net Media Group wanted to buy us out for $15 million. The email came with bullet points compliments and the subtext of surrender. Leo read it, then looked up. $15 million is security. Or silence, I replied. He smiled faintly. You really are your dad's opposite. Good. I turned off my phone. We were just getting started. 2 weeks later, we hosted our first International Creator Summit. 80 people flew in, ordinary people who had used ClickNest to quit jobs they hated and live off what they loved. A painter from Seoul hugged me in tears. You gave me my life back, she said. No investor could match that. Still, the pressure mounted. Taxes, scaling, lawsuit success came with its own gravity. There were nights when I stared at the city lights and wondered if my dad was right. Maybe I was dreaming too big too fast. Then came an email from Japan. The sender, Hayato Sato. The subject line: I see you building something worth teaching. I didn't know it then, but Hayato would become the mentor. I didn't know I needed the man who would teach me what power meant when used with purpose. But that night I closed my laptop and walked to the mirror. For the first time, I saw not the barista who'd once served coffee, not the daughter who'd been doubted, but the woman who had turned disbelief into fuel. I whispered to my reflection, this is just the seed. The next morning, I wired $500,000 into the business expansion account. The first line of the note read, investing in what money can't buy: trust, freedom, and a story worth telling. Outside, the fog lifted. The sunlight hit the glass towers of the city like a promise. That was the morning I realized the true wealth of the rich isn't in what they own. It's in what they build. The email came at 3 a.m. Subject line, new order received, ClickNest. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. I'd been awake for 32 hours straight, running on coffee and stubbornness, staring at code that refused to cooperate.
But when I clicked the notification and saw the number $50, my breath caught. It wasn't much. It was barely enough to buy a tank of gas, but it was real. Someone somewhere in the world had looked at my idea and decided it was worth paying for. I whispered to myself, $50, my first client. Leo appeared in the doorway of the office, hair a mess, hoodie halfway zipped. You look like you just found buried treasure. I did, I said, turning the screen toward him. He leaned in, then smiled. Told you, it starts small. Think big. Start small. That's how the rich build. I laughed, exhausted but elated.
It's not just the money, Leo. It's proof. Exactly, he said, patting the whiteboard. Now turn that proof into momentum. We worked until sunrise. I built the project myself, a digital portfolio for a small jewelry brand in Portland. Nothing fancy. But when I sent it off, the client replied within an hour, "This is perfect. You've got a gift. Thank you." She left a 5-star review. I printed it, taped it to the wall above my desk, and wrote underneath, "Proof that dreams pay bills." That night, Leo ordered cheap champagne again. We toasted to the smallest, most beautiful victory of our careers. To the first dollar we didn't have to beg for, he said. But the world doesn't let you celebrate for long. 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. The woman on the line spoke carefully, as if afraid I'd break. "Ms. Morgan, we need to confirm a $20,000 business loan application submitted under your name. It was co-signed by your dad." I froze. "That's not possible. I didn't apply for any loan." She hesitated. "It was approved this morning." The co-signer was listed as Ethan Morgan. My blood went cold. I hung up before she could finish. My hands shook as I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to my parents' house. The porch light was on, the same one that used to guide me home from high school debates and heartbreaks. I hadn't realized until that moment how foreign it felt now, like I was trespassing on a memory. Inside, my dad sat at the kitchen table reading the paper as if the world outside didn't exist. Ethan leaned against the counter, phone in hand, scrolling through social media. I dropped my purse on the table. You used my name to take out a loan. Ethan looked up, feigning confusion. Relax, sis. It's family money. I just needed a short-term push for my truck business. Dad co-signed. You've got credit. I've got an opportunity. Everyone wins. My dad didn't even look up. He told me it was for your Project Ava. You didn't tell me you needed funding. Because I didn't. My voice cracked. Do you even realize what you've done? That loan's in my name, my credit, my future. Ethan shrugged. You've got millions. Don't act like 50 grand will ruin you. I took a step closer. It's not the money, Ethan. It's the principle. You took my name without asking. He smirked. Oh, come on. You act like you're some business saint now. You built a website. Congrats. Not everyone gets to go viral. Something inside me snapped. You think this was luck? You think $9 million just showed up in my account because I wished for it? I built it while you were busy blaming everyone for why you never started. My dad slammed his palm on the table. Enough, he's your brother. Families share things. You've got enough success for both of you. I turned to him slowly. That's the problem, Dad. You still think sharing means taking from the one who worked. He glared at me, but I didn't flinch. I'd learned to stand tall in boardrooms full of investors who thought I was too young, too female, too unqualified. My dad was just another skeptic now. When I walked out, I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I just said quietly, I hope one day you both understand that trust is more expensive than money. That night I sat alone in my apartment, the glow of the city filtering through the blinds. The pain felt old and new at the same time, like reopening a wound I thought had healed. I pulled out my journal and wrote one line. The rich don't build wealth on luck. They build it on integrity. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted clarity. A few hours later, I got a message from Leo. Leo. You awake me barely. Leo. Then wake up. You'll want to see this. He sent me a screenshot and email from Japan. Dear Ms. Morgan, I've been following ClickNest's growth. I believe your platform has what I call the spirit of silent wealth. Let's discuss potential partnerships. H. Sato. I stared at it for a long time, the anger in me slowly turning into focus. While my family was busy borrowing my name, strangers across the ocean were recognizing my work. I leaned back, exhaling. The same pixels my dad mocked were opening doors he couldn't even imagine. Leo message again. Leo. So what do? Me, we reply. I typed a single line back to Hayato Sato. Thank you for seeing what others couldn't. When I hit send, I felt something shift. That night I realized the truest thing about money, it doesn't change who you are. It just reveals who was pretending. Outside the city, lights blinked like distant promises. I closed my laptop and whispered to the dark. This is where the real story begins. The plane descended through a sea of clouds, and for the first time in years, I felt small again in a good way. Tokyo unfolded beneath me like circuitry alive and humming, as if the entire city had been built by people who never stopped believing in impossible things. I landed with one purpose: to meet the man who'd seen value in ClickNest before most Americans even knew my name. Hayato Sato. His email had been brief, almost cryptic, but Leo couldn't stop talking about it. He's a legend, Leo had said. Built $2 billion companies from scratch, mentored half of Japan's startup scene, and retired before 50. The man practically wrote the money rules of the rich in real life. Now standing outside Narita Airport, I wasn't thinking about success. I was thinking about whether I'd be enough. A black car waited for me, the driver holding a placard that read, A. Morgan. The ride into the city was silent except for the rhythmic sound of rain against glass. Tokyo wasn't loud like New York. It was deliberate, balanced, disciplined. A place where chaos knew how to bow. Hayato's office was nothing like I expected. No towering skyscraper, no rows of assistants. It was a tea house tucked between two alleys, bamboo lining the entrance. A single bell chiming as I pushed open the door. He was already there, an older man in a gray suit, silver hair posture, straight as a blade. He gestured toward the tatami mat opposite him. Sit. I did. For a long moment, he said nothing. He poured tea with quiet precision steam, curling between us like breath. Then, without looking up, he asked, "What do you believe money is for?" The question caught me off guard. "Freedom," I said finally. He smiled faintly. Freedom from what I hesitated, from needing approval. Now he looked at me. "Then you are halfway there." He sipped his tea, eyes steady, almost kind. "Do you know why I wrote to you, Miss Morgan?" "Because you saw potential, because I saw loneliness." The words hit harder than I expected. "Your company grows," he continued, "but your roots are still tangled in anger. You are building to prove a point, not to build peace. And money built on anger burns fast." I swallowed hard. I built ClickNest to give people power, people like me who were dismissed. Then build it from peace, not proof. He set his cup down. "There is a difference." I didn't know what to say. He rose, motioning for me to follow. We stepped outside into a small garden drenched in rain. "You remind me of myself when I was young," he said. "Hungry, clever, proud. But pride is heavy to carry up a mountain." He stopped beside a koi pond, the water rippling with drops of rain. "You see them?" he asked, nodding toward the fish. "They move without fighting the current. They don't chase. They align." I watched them swirl orange and gold flashes beneath the surface. "And that's what I should do." He nodded. "You think too much about control. The rich do not chase money. They attract it by becoming valuable." That night I wrote those words in my notebook: attract, don't chase. Build assets, not arguments. For the next week, I shadowed Hayato wherever he went. Boardrooms, workshops, quiet dinners, where ideas were served like dessert. I watched how he listened more than he spoke, how every decision came from patience, not pressure. One evening as we walked through the neon streets of Shibuya, he stopped at a vending machine and handed me a can of coffee. "You Americans rush," he said, "always looking for the next win. But legacy isn't built in wins. It's built in repetition." I asked him what he meant. "Do one small thing every day that outlives you." He looked up at the giant digital billboard above us, some crypto startup promising instant wealth. "They will be gone in a year," he said, "because they mistake speed for significance." I thought of my brother, of the loan he'd taken in my name, of how much I wanted to prove him wrong. Suddenly it all felt smaller. When I told Hayato about what happened with my family, he didn't judge. He only said, "You must understand, family will always test your peace. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the refusal to participate in chaos." The next morning he called me into his office. A contract lay on the table, stamped with his signature. "ClickNest will receive 5 million yen in mentorship funding," he said. "Not for expansion, for patience. You will hire 2 new developers, no more. You will spend 1 month listening to your customers, not pitching to investors." I blinked. "That's unorthodox." He smiled. "So is success." Before I left Tokyo, we met once more at the same tea house. This time, he placed a small silver pen on the table between us. "A mentor once gave this to me," he said, "when I signed my first contract. It's not the ink that matters. It's what you write with it." I hesitated. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Consider it a reminder, patience compounds faster than profit." As the plane took off that evening, I looked down at the city, its lights steady, unwavering. The pen sat in my hand, cool and heavy like a promise. I thought about everything Hayato had said, about attraction, alignment, and the kind of wealth that couldn't be measured by zeros. In the seat beside me, Leo slept with headphones on. I opened my laptop, staring at the ClickNest dashboard. The user count blinked past 2 million. But for the first time, I didn't feel the rush of growth. I felt the stillness of purpose. I typed 1 new line of code into our homepage banner before closing it for the night. Think big. Start small. Build forever. The city disappeared beneath the clouds, but the lesson stayed. We weren't just building a company anymore. We were building a legacy. The first fire didn't come from outside. It came from within. 3 months after returning from Tokyo, ClickNest was exploding with growth. Our user base tripled. Creators were signing up faster than our servers could handle. The dashboards lit up like Christmas. The numbers rising so fast they felt unreal. On paper, we looked unstoppable. In reality, we were on the edge of breaking. Leo stood at the head of the conference room table, eyes red from sleepless nights. We're running at 92% capacity. If one more update goes wrong, the whole site could crash. I stared at the code scrolling across my laptop screen. Every line was a heartbeat, every bug a threat. "We'll handle it," I said, though I wasn't sure how. He rubbed his temples. "Ava, we need help. We're beyond startup mode now. We need structure. We need a board. We need investors," I cut in. He hesitated. "Maybe. The right ones. The right ones." Those words echoed in my head all night. I'd built ClickNest with the promise that we'd never let anyone own our vision. But now the vision was burning under the weight of success. By morning, the Tokyo mentorship money was gone, spent on infrastructure staff, customer support. The same headlines that once called me the young disruptor now called me the woman who scaled too fast. At noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Ethan, congrats on the press. Maybe now you can afford to pay Dad back for the loan you pretended not to know about." I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through ClickNest's feed. Among the flood of creators and projects, I saw one name that made my chest tighten: Ethan Morgan, Handcrafted Lifestyle. He'd created an account using our platform, my platform. He was selling custom truck accessories, leveraging the very tools he'd mocked me for building. The irony was almost poetic. Leo walked in holding 2 coffees. "You okay?" I handed him my phone. "He's using ClickNest." Leo looked at it, then shrugged. "Let him. The platform's for everyone, right?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Right." But inside, I could feel something twisting, a quiet ache that success couldn't soothe. That night, the fire became literal. At 2:43 a.m., Leo's call jolted me awake. "Server rooms down. We've been hit." By the time I got to the office, the air reeked of burnt plastic and ozone. One of the power units had overheated, frying half our database. Engineers were scrambling cables everywhere, faces pale. "How bad?" I asked. 30% of user data is corrupted," Leo said. "We have backups, but the restore will take days, and people are already noticing." The headlines came fast. ClickNest crashes, millions of creators locked out. Can a one-woman empire survive its first real test? I sat in my office staring at the chaos outside the glass walls. Every ping of my phone was another angry message, another refund request. For a moment, I felt the same helplessness I'd felt that night at my dad's dinner table, small, unseen, powerless. Then I heard Hayato's voice in my head. "The rich do not chase money. They attract it by becoming valuable." I stood up. "Get the dev team in the conference room," I said. "All of them." Leo looked wary. "Ava, they've been awake for 30 hours. So have I." When everyone gathered, I didn't give a speech. I just said, "We fix this not because of the money, but because the people who believed in us deserve better. We don't owe investors. We owe creators. We worked for 72 straight hours. The building never slept. Coffee became currency. Code became confession. Every problem solved was another step back from the edge." By day 4, the servers were running again. No data lost. No permanent damage. When the system finally stabilized, I walked outside and stood under the morning sky. The city smelled like rain, not smoke. My hands were trembling, but not from exhaustion, from gratitude. Leo joined me, tossing me a cold drink. "You just survived your first fire," he said. I smiled faintly. "No, we did. We watched the sunrise in silence. It wasn't victory, it was survival." Later that day, I got another message. This one wasn't from Ethan or the press. It was from Hayato. "I read about your crash. Do you understand the lesson?" I typed back, "that perfection is fragile." His reply came seconds later. "No." That leadership is not built in comfort. You are learning the second rule of wealth: resilience compounds faster than profit. That night I returned to my apartment, dropped my bag, and collapsed on the couch. My phone buzzed again, this time with a video notification. Ethan. His business had gone viral. My own platform had made him rich. The comment section was filled with praise. A real family success story. 2 siblings both thriving on ClickNest. I stared at the screen, the irony stinging worse than the exhaustion. Then slowly I smiled. If my platform could lift even him, the brother who once called me a joke, then maybe Hayato was right. Maybe this wasn't about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about building something that could outlive the pain that started it. I opened my journal and wrote one last line before falling asleep. The first fire didn't destroy me. It purified me. When I woke up, the sun was already high. A new message from Leo waited on my screen. Leo. Japan's interested again. Hayato wants you back. I stared at the text, the weight of it sinking in. The world had tested my creation, and I was still standing. I grabbed my silver pen, the one Hayato had given me, and whispered, "Round 2." Then I opened my laptop. The next chapter had already begun. The morning light poured through the office windows, too bright for the mood inside. Our glass walls, once a symbol of transparency and pride, now felt like a cage. Everyone was silent except for the steady tapping of keys, a desperate rhythm to hold the company together. Leo stood across from me, a half-empty mug in his hand. "We can't keep running like this, Ava," he said quietly. "We're scaling too fast. We need outside capital or we'll burn out." I rubbed my eyes, scanning the latest report. The numbers were brutal: server costs, up user support, overwhelmed profit margins vanishing under expansion. "Outside capital means outside control," I replied. "That's how dreams are often lost, Leo." He sighed, setting his mug down with a thud. "You don't have to do everything alone." "I'm not alone," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I have you." He didn't smile back. For now. The words hung in the air longer than they should have. I walked to the window, staring at the skyline. Tokyo's lesson echoed in my mind: build from peace, not proof. But peace was hard to find when every hour brought a new fire. That afternoon, an investor meeting loomed, a chance to secure $1 million partnership. It should have been exciting. Instead, it felt like a test of who I was willing to become. Leo followed me into the elevator, silence stretching between us. When the doors opened, the conference room was already full. Polished men in dark suits sat waiting, the air smelling faintly of expensive coffee and calculation. The lead investor, Richard Kane, rose to greet me. "Ava Morgan," he said with a perfect politician's smile. "The girl who turned coffee money into millions." "Woman," I corrected. And it wasn't coffee money, it was conviction. A ripple of polite laughter spread around the table. Leo sat down beside me, pretending to relax. Kane clicked a pen and leaned forward. "ClickNest is impressive. But you're young. You'll need guidance. We can take 25% equity for $5 million. I felt the room tilt. 25 control means stability, Kane said smoothly. And stability is how empires last. I glanced at Leo. He looked torn, tempted by the promise of safety. I thought of Hayato's words. "You are building to prove a point, not to build peace." I straightened. "ClickNest isn't for sale. Not even a quarter of it." The air thickened. Kane's smile didn't waver, but his tone cooled. "You'll regret that. Markets move fast. So do opportunities. Opportunities come and go," I said. "But principles stay." Leo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The meeting ended in silence. Kane's team packed up their papers, their polite smiles brittle. I stayed seated, heart pounding. I had just turned down $5 million and maybe the stability of everything we'd built. When the room cleared, Leo exhaled. "You just walked away from a safety net." I walked away from a leash. He stared at me, frustration flashing in his eyes. "You're brave, Ava, but bravery doesn't pay bills." I looked at him, suddenly exhausted. "You think I don't know that?" You think I built all this because it was easy." He didn't answer. He just grabbed his jacket and walked out, leaving the echo of his footsteps behind. For the first time in months, the office felt cold. That night I stayed late staring at the reflection of the city in the glass walls. Somewhere out there, millions of people were using ClickNest, creating, selling, thriving. And yet here I was wondering if I'd just doomed us. My phone buzzed. A message from Hayato. "Do not fear storms. They show you who is anchored." I smiled faintly. "Easier said than done," I whispered. The storm came the next morning. An article hit the tech press. Sources claim ClickNest rejects funding, faces internal rift. The leak was small but poisonous. Investors backed off. Users panicked. Emails poured in. Leo still hadn't returned my calls. By noon, the walls of my glass office felt like they were closing in. I could see my team whispering outside, glancing at me like I was the captain of a sinking ship. I walked into the center of the office and said, "Everyone take a break. Now." They froze. "Go outside. Eat. Rest. Come back in an hour." No one moved. So I added, "Please." As they left, I sat on the floor back against the glass. For the first time in years, I let myself feel it, the exhaustion, the doubt, the ache of carrying a dream that refused to fit in other people's boxes. Then I remembered Hayato's silver pen. I pulled it from my bag and held it up to the light. It had weight like truth. I opened my notebook and wrote, "When you refuse to sell your soul, you must be ready to rebuild it." An hour later, the team came back. Their faces were pale, tired, but waiting. I stood. "We're not collapsing," I said. "We're transforming. No more chasing investors. No more playing defense. We go back to our roots, creators first. The same people who built us." Leo appeared at the door, eyes rimmed with guilt. "I saw the article," he said. "They called me too." I didn't answer. "Good," I said softly. "Then we start over together." He nodded slowly. "You really think we can rebuild this after all we lost?" "We won't rebuild," I said. "We'll evolve." By midnight, the office was alive again. Coffee cups lined the tables, laughter replaced fear, and the hum of keyboards returned, this time steadier, stronger. As dawn broke over the skyline, Leo looked up from his screen. "Do you ever stop?" I smiled. "When peace becomes my default, not my goal." Outside, the city was waking. The storm had passed, not because it spared us, but because we decided not to run. And in the quiet between heartbeats, I realized the glass walls weren't a cage after all. They were mirrors. And I finally liked what I saw. The night before I flew back to Tokyo, I couldn't sleep. The city outside my apartment window pulsed with light and noise, but all I could hear was silence, the kind that follows exhaustion too deep for words. ClickNest was alive again, stronger even, but something in me still felt incomplete. Maybe Hayato had been right. Peace wasn't built in victory. It was built in understanding. The flight was long, dreamless. When I landed, Tokyo's sky was gray and damp. The air smelled faintly of rain and cedar. Hayato's assistant met me at the terminal, bowing politely. "Mr. Sato is expecting you at the garden," she said. When I arrived, the same koi pond rippled under a drizzle. Hayato was sitting beneath a maple tree, an umbrella resting beside him. He looked older this time, but his presence hadn't faded. It was still sharp-centered calm. He didn't look up as I approached. "You've been through fire," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And I survived." "Survival is not the goal," he said simply. "Transcendence is." He gestured for me to sit beside him. The rain fell soft and rhythmic, like a metronome. "You faced collapse," he said, "and still refused investors. Why? Because they would have owned me." He nodded slowly. "And what does ownership mean to you now?" I thought of my dad's dismissive look at the dinner table, of Ethan's messages, of Leo's faith when everything cracked. "It means alignment," I said. "Ownership is harmony between vision and value." Hayato smiled faintly. "Good. You are learning the money rules of the rich, not to chase, but to choose." He stood brushing rain from his sleeve. Walk with me? We moved along the garden path, gravel crunching beneath our shoes. You built something from rejection, he said. But tell me, do you know why you truly came back here? I hesitated. To thank you. And to learn what comes next. He shook his head. No, you came back because you still believe money and worth are the same thing. I stopped walking. That's not true. He turned eyes calm but unyielding. Then why did you come running the moment your company was threatened? Why not trust it to live without you? I didn't have an answer. You are still trying to prove you deserve success, he said. But the rich, the truly rich, financially, emotionally, spiritually, they act from abundance, not fear. Act like the rich, Ava. Stop defending your value. Start expanding it. He led me to a small wooden structure overlooking the garden. Inside, a whiteboard stood covered in equations, diagrams, and notes written in both English and Japanese. These are projections for your platform, he said. But this, he tapped his chest, is the real product. The mind that built it. I stepped closer, studying the board. It was filled with possibilities I hadn't dared to imagine: international partnerships, creator co-ops, educational initiatives. He'd mapped out a way for ClickNest to outgrow commerce entirely. This is huge, I whispered. This is a vision, he said. And vision is not born from scale. It's born from stillness. We sat down across from each other, and for hours he talked about compound value, emotional discipline, and the secret rhythm of wealth. Every word cut deeper than any business book I'd ever read. At one point, he leaned forward and said, "You Americans love the phrase, think big, start small. But you forget the third rule. Stay steady." I laughed softly. "We don't do well." He smiled. "Then you will learn." By evening, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered through the mist like stars trapped in glass. As I stood to leave, Hayato handed me an envelope sealed with wax. "Do, and money will start chasing you," he said. "What is this? Your next step." When I opened it back at the hotel, there was a single line handwritten in Japanese. Beneath it, an English translation: "Return home. Build wealth that cannot be stolen." And below that, a bank authorization letter. It gave me access to a small fund under one condition: I had to use it not for ClickNest, but for teaching others how to build freedom. I stared at it for a long time. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed his words. Build wealth that cannot be stolen. In the morning, I boarded a flight back to the States. On the plane, I opened my laptop. Leo had sent a message. Leo. Our creators are asking for education tools, how to scale their income, not just their followers. You up for it? I typed back before the thought could fade. AVA. Yes. Let's build ClickNest Academy. When the plane touched down, the world felt lighter. At the office, Leo greeted me with his usual crooked grin. "So what did the Zen billionaire teach you?" This time I placed the envelope on his desk. "That we've been chasing money. It's time to make it chase us." He raised an eyebrow. "You sound like Jim Rohn. Maybe he stole it from Hayato." We laughed, but deep down I knew it wasn't a joke. The next few weeks moved like a heartbeat, steady, strong. ClickNest Academy launched quietly but caught fire fast. Within 2 months, creators weren't just earning, they were learning. People started calling it the Freedom Engine. At the first live session, I looked into the camera and said, "Don't build income. Build assets. Build peace." Thousands watched. The chat exploded with messages. And for the first time, I wasn't chasing validation. I was sharing power. That night, as I left the studio, Leo called out, "You did it, Ava. We're not just a platform anymore." I smiled. "No, we're a philosophy." Later in my apartment, I opened Hayato's silver pen case and placed inside it a folded note of my own. The lesson is complete. I no longer chase. Then I closed it and whispered to the quiet room, "Thank you, Hayato." Outside, the city lights shimmered again, this time not as reminders of chaos, but as reflections of clarity. The storm inside me had finally stilled, and somewhere across the ocean, I knew my mentor was smiling. The first time I stood on stage, I almost walked off before saying a word. The conference was in San Francisco, a sleek, sterile tech summit where founders bragged about valuations and venture rounds. My hands were damp, my pulse loud in my ears. Leo whispered, "You got this from backstage," but I wasn't sure I did. 1,000 faces stared back at me. Investors, journalists, competitors, somewhere in that crowd, maybe even my brother Ethan. I gripped the edges of the podium and forced my voice steady. When my dad told me I'd never make money online, I began. He was right at first, a ripple of laughter, because I didn't understand money. I thought it was a finish line, but money is not the goal, it's the mirror. As I spoke, I saw heads nodding, cameras rising. For the first time, I wasn't explaining my worth. I was embodying it. Afterward, Leo met me backstage, grinning. "You just dropped a masterclass in Jim Rohn motivation," he said. I laughed, exhaling. Let's hope someone was listening. But someone else had been listening, someone I didn't expect. Later that evening, as we mingled at the after-party, a familiar voice cut through the chatter. "Still chasing dreams in hoodies, huh?" Ethan stood there, a champagne glass in hand, his suit sharp, his smile sharper. "Nice event," he said. "You really made yourself a brand." "It's a mission," I replied evenly. He looked around, unimpressed. "Dad sent me. He's worried. Says you're turning family into a story." I met his gaze. Maybe the story needed telling. Ethan's smirk faded. "You think success erases the past?" "You humiliated him." "Ava, I didn't humiliate him. He did that himself when he said I'd never make money." He shook his head, draining his glass. "You got lucky with timing, that's all. Real wealth isn't about screens and clicks. It's about legacy." "Then why are you using my platform to sell your products?" "That's business." "No, that's ironic." He set the glass down hard. "You always think you're smarter than everyone. But one day the market will remind you you're not." Then he walked away, leaving a cold taste in the air. Leo appeared behind me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said softly. "Just an echo from the past." But that night in my hotel room, the echo wouldn't fade. My family had become spectators in my life's arena, and some part of me still wanted their applause. I closed my laptop and stared at the city lights. Hayato's words returned, "Stop proving, start expanding." So the next morning, I did exactly that. We expanded. Over the following months, ClickNest became a global movement. The Academy grew into a full ecosystem training creators to build assets, not just income. The tagline spread everywhere. "Freedom is the new currency." I spoke at universities, hosted workshops, and partnered with ethical investors who believed in our philosophy. The world was finally catching up to what I'd known in silence for years. But with the spotlight came new shadows. The media wanted headlines. The online millionaire who outsmarted Wall Street. The daughter who defied her dad's empire. Each story twisted the truth into drama. When one reporter asked, "Do you think your dad regrets doubting you?" I froze. I wanted to say yes, but the truth I didn't know. I hadn't spoken to my family in 2 years. That night I received a text. Unknown number. Only one line. "He's not well. You should come home." It was from Ethan. I stared at it for a long time before replying. AVA. "Is this another guilt trip, Ethan?" "No. It's real. Mom's worried. Please." 2 days later, I was back in Texas. The house looked smaller than I remembered. My mother opened the door, her eyes tired but kind. "You came," she whispered. Inside, everything smelled like cedar and coffee, the same as the night of the dinner years ago. My dad sat in the armchair, thinner now, a blanket over his legs. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Ava," Dad said softly, "you're on TV." I smiled faintly. "Sometimes." He gestured for me to sit. I didn't mean what I said that night. "Yes, you did," I said. "And maybe you needed to." His eyes watered. "I was scared you'd fail. The world eats dreamers alive." "I know," I said quietly, "but it also feeds the ones who refuse to give up." Ethan entered the room, standing awkwardly by the door. "She's doing fine, Dad. Better than fine." I glanced at him. "Since when do you defend me?" He shrugged. "Since I realized you built the very thing that's keeping my business alive." For the first time in years, we laughed together, short, uneasy, but real. That evening, after my parents went to bed, Ethan found me on the porch. The air was warm, the crickets loud. "I wasn't lying," he said. "Dad's proud of you. He just doesn't know how to say it." "Maybe he doesn't have to," I replied. He hesitated, then added, "Ava, there's something you should know. Some of Dad's old friends are sniffing around your company. They think you're vulnerable because you refused the big funds. Be careful." I nodded slowly. "Thanks for the warning." He smiled faintly. "Guess we both grew up." As he went inside, I stayed on the porch, watching the stars fade into dawn. The summit, the applause. The money, it all felt distant compared to that small, fragile piece. When I finally returned to Austin, I called Leo. "I'm changing our slogan," I said. He groaned. Again, yes. From "freedom is the new currency" to "peace pays better." He laughed. "You're impossible." "Maybe," I said, "but it's working." As I hung up, I looked around my office, the same glass walls, but now they reflected more than ambition. They reflected growth, forgiveness, and something deeper than success. And for the first time, I felt no need to prove anything to anyone, not even myself. Still in the quiet of the night, I knew the story wasn't over. Because somewhere a whisper from the market was rising again, an opportunity too big, too strange, and too perfect to ignore. And when it came, I'd be ready. But not to chase it, to choose it. It started with an email. No subject line, no signature. Just a single sentence that changed everything. "We'd like to discuss a potential acquisition, 120 million full ownership." At first I thought it was spam, but the sender's domain blueharborcapital.com was real. A top investment firm known for swallowing startups and spinning them into gold. I stared at the screen, my heart beating fast. $120 million. The kind of number that used to exist only in other people's stories. Leo leaned over my desk when I showed him. "Holy, okay, Ava, this is it. This is the dream." I shook my head slowly. "Or the trap. They're offering life-changing money." "I already have a life," I said, but my voice wavered. He sat down, lowering his tone. "You always said you'd never sell, but this isn't about selling, it's about scaling. You could use that money to build 10 new companies." Maybe he was right. Maybe this was the next level. But something in me hesitated. Hayato's voice whispered from memory, "Build wealth that cannot be stolen." We agreed to meet them anyway. The meeting was set in New York at a glass tower overlooking Central Park. The conference room was all marble and restraint, the kind of space that made ambition feel small. The lead negotiator, a woman named Julia Crane, greeted us with a firm handshake and eyes like sharpened glass. "Ava." She said, "We've been watching ClickNest for a long time. What you've built is extraordinary. We want to take it global." "Global," I repeated. "By replacing me," she smiled, "practiced and perfect. By elevating you, you'd stay on as a strategic advisor. 3-year contract. Full creative control." I looked at Leo. He mouthed, "This could change everything." Julia continued, "Our analytics suggest your brand could triple its valuation under our umbrella. Think big, Ava. Think generationally." I thought of my dad's voice saying the same word, generational, but in his world, that meant control, not freedom. "I'll think about it," I said finally. Julia nodded. "Of course, but the offer won't stay open long. Money moves fast." When we left the building, Leo exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for an hour. "So what are you thinking?" I didn't answer. Instead, I walked through the city, feeling its pulse under my feet. Every corner hummed with people chasing something status, success, validation. For years, I'd been one of them. That night I called Hayato. He answered on the second ring. "You sound heavy," he said. "Someone wants to buy ClickNest. How much? $120 million. A pause. Then, enough to buy 100 illusions. I smiled despite myself. You think I shouldn't do it? I think the question isn't whether you should. It's whether you need to. I sank into my hotel chair. Maybe I just want to rest. Rest isn't bought, he said softly. It's built. The line went quiet except for his breathing. Finally, he said, ask yourself one thing. What part of you wants to sell the creator or the wounded daughter? His words hit deeper than I wanted them to. After the call, I stared out the window, the city lights stretching like constellations of greed. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but inside I was split in two. The next morning I met Julia again alone. She slid a sleek folder across the table. Final offer, $150 million, signed today, closed in 30 days. Why the rush, I asked. Because someone else is interested, she said smoothly. And they won't be as generous. Who? She smiled. Let's just say, old money. My stomach tightened. Hard Enterprises. Julia didn't answer, but her silence confirmed everything. My dad's company. The same firm that once called my startup pixie dust. Now they wanted to buy it. I stood slowly. The meeting's over. She blinked. Ava, you're walking away from generational wealth. No, I said. I'm walking away from generational chains. Her expression hardened. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But at least it'll be my regret. Back at the office, Leo looked furious when I told him. You turned down $150 million, Ava. This was our exit. I'm not done building. You're addicted to the challenge. You don't have to prove anything anymore. I'm not proving, I said. I'm protecting. Protecting what ego. I looked at him steady. Legacy. He didn't understand, not yet. But he would. I walked to the glass wall and ran my palm across the cool surface, feeling the thrum of the city on the other side. $150 million. It wasn't just a number. It was a lifetime of security. It was the power to finally tell my dad he was wrong, not with words, but with untouchable, irreversible proof. But then Hayato's voice cut through the temptation, build wealth that cannot be stolen. If I took the money now, I was letting my dad win the argument even if I won the cash. I would be exchanging my hard-earned peace for a comfortable silence. The only way to truly win was to keep building from the core of my convictions, forcing them to acknowledge the value of my philosophy, not just my valuation. I would not sell the vision I built from loneliness. That evening, I drafted a public statement: ClickNest will not be sold or acquired. We believe in ownership freedom and the future of creators controlling their own wealth. Thank you for believing in us. Within an hour, it went viral. Some called it inspiring. Others called it arrogant. My phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists wanted interviews. Investors wanted explanations. But one message stopped me cold. It was from my dad. You turned down my offer. Brave or foolish? Time will tell. I typed a reply, then deleted it. Some battles didn't need words anymore. 2 days later, Ethan called. You made Dad furious, he said. He called you reckless. Good, I said. That means I'm finally on the right path. He sighed. You're impossible. I'm free. When the call ended, I walked to the window and watched the sunrise spread across the skyline. The city was waking again, millions of stories unfolding, millions of people chasing their version of enough. And I realized something. The moment I stopped chasing wealth, it started chasing me. Because real power wasn't in the number on a screen. It was in the refusal to sell your soul to anyone who thought they could buy it. And for the first time, I knew exactly who I was, not the girl proving her worth, not the daughter seeking approval, but the woman who built her own kingdom and chose to keep it. 3 days after I rejected the buyout, the first attack came quietly, like a crack in the glass. A journalist published a headline that read, ClickNest's finances under scrutiny, insiders question. Morgan's stability. The article quoted anonymous sources claiming I had embezzled investor funds and that the company was on the verge of collapse. Leo burst into my office, phone in hand. Tell me this isn't real. I looked up from my laptop. Of course it isn't real. Then we have a problem, he said, voice tight. Because the story's spreading like wildfire. Investors are panicking. Users are pulling their accounts. Within an hour, my inbox was a storm, journalists demanding statements, employees asking if they still had jobs. It was too coordinated to be random. Someone had orchestrated it. That night I sat alone in the office lights, dim, the city glowing beyond the glass. I scrolled through the article again, every line laced with manipulation. One phrase stood out. Family sources confirm Ava Morgan's emotional instability. Family. Only one person fit that word. I called Ethan. He didn't answer. I texted him. No reply. The next morning, the second blow hit. Blue Harbor Capital, the same firm that had offered to buy us, announced a strategic partnership with Hart Enterprises, my dad's company. The message was clear: if they couldn't buy me, they'd break me. I walked into the boardroom where my team was waiting, their faces, pale eyes uncertain. "We're not defeated," I said before anyone could speak. "We're under attack, and I know who's pulling the strings." Leo slammed a folder on the table. "We traced the leak. It came from inside your dad's PR network." The room went silent. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. Then it's time to stop reacting and start playing offense. I spent the next 12 hours crafting a plan. Not revenge clarity. If they wanted to weaponize perception, I'd use transparency. At dawn, I posted a live video from ClickNest's official account. No script, no PR polish, just me sitting in the same hoodie I'd worn when I built the first version of the site. "I've been accused of being unstable, reckless, unfit to lead," I said. Maybe I am unstable enough to disrupt industries, reckless enough to build what others only talked about, and unfit to lead. No, I'm unfit to quit. I paused, letting the silence breathe. My dad's company tried to buy ClickNest. I said no. This is what happens when you say no to the old rules of power. But the truth is simple. ClickNest's accounts are clean, our growth is real, and our people stand with me. I looked straight into the camera. Money doesn't create integrity. Integrity creates money. And I'm done apologizing for how I built mine. Within minutes, the video exploded. Hashtags flooded social media. Stand with Ava creators over corporations. Users uploaded stories of how ClickNest had changed their lives. By noon, the narrative had flipped. The same outlets that questioned me now called me the face of digital independence. Leo burst into my office, eyes wide. "You did it. We're trending worldwide." I smiled faintly. No, they did it. The creators. The people who actually matter. But I knew the fight wasn't over. That afternoon, I received an email from my dad. No greeting, no warmth. Just 3 sentences. "Impressive performance. But this isn't a movie, Ava. When the market turns, idealists get swept away. You've made yourself a symbol. Be careful, it's a short fall from the pedestal." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I hit delete. That night, Ethan called. His voice was quieter than I remembered. "He's furious," he said. "He says you humiliated him publicly." "I didn't humiliate him," I said. "He did that to himself when he underestimated me." Ethan sighed. "He won't stop, Ava." "You know that, right? I'm counting on it," I said. "Because every time he attacks, he proves my point." The next morning I flew to New York, not to negotiate, but to finish what he'd started. The lobby of Hart Enterprises smelled like leather and pride. When I walked in, the receptionist looked startled. "Ms. Morgan does Mr. Hart know you're coming. He will in about 10 seconds. I didn't wait for permission. I took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened to his office. Massive windows, mahogany desk, the same man who once told me I'd never make a dime online. He looked up, startled, then smirked. "You shouldn't be here." "I built something you couldn't control," I said. "So you tried to ruin it." He leaned back. "It's business, Ava. Don't make it personal." "It's only business when men do it right. When women fight back, it's emotional." His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm making a statement." I placed a folder on his desk, copies of every communication tying his PR network to the smear campaign. Consider this a courtesy, I said. Next time it goes public. He studied me for a long moment. You've changed. No, I said. I finally stopped asking for permission to exist. I turned to leave. Ava, he said, his voice softer now. You think this is victory? It's just survival. I looked over my shoulder. Then survival must run in the family. When I stepped back into the elevator, my reflection stared back, steady, calm, untouchable. By the time I landed back in Austin, the storm had quieted. Investors called to apologize. Journalists backtracked. But I didn't celebrate. I just sat in my office, lights off the city glowing below, and whispered to myself, this is what power feels like when you earn it. And somewhere deep down, I knew the next battle wouldn't come from outside. It would come from the cost of holding everything I refused to lose. I didn't notice how heavy success had become until the night I forgot my mother's birthday. It was a Tuesday. We had just signed our biggest partnership deal. ClickNest Academy was going global with a major education platform. Reporters called it the turning point for the creator economy. My phone buzzed nonstop with congratulations offers and interviews. Somewhere between a Zoom meeting and another press call, Leo appeared at my door holding a cupcake with a candle stuck in it. You missed it, he said. Missed what, your mom's birthday? The air froze around us. He gave me a sad smile. You should call her. When he left, I just sat there staring at the candle flickering against the glass wall. The weight of everything I'd built pressed down on me, the empire, the headlines, the people who looked to me for inspiration. But at that moment, I didn't feel powerful. I felt hollow. That night I called home. My mother answered after a few rings. Ava, she said softly. I'm sorry, Mom. I got caught up. I know, she said. I saw you on TV. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. Your dad watched too. He didn't say much. How is him? She hesitated. Slower, quieter, but he keeps a newspaper clipping of you in his office. I didn't know what to say. I'll visit soon. You always say that, she whispered, then hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time. The candle had melted down to wax and silence. The next morning, Leo found me in the office early. You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't. He handed me a coffee. Then maybe sleep later. You've got a board call in an hour. The call was supposed to be routine financial updates, product forecasts, but halfway through, one of the board members, a sharp woman named Diane, said, Ava, we've been approached again. Another acquisition offer. I felt my stomach drop. From who? She exchanged a glance with the others. Blue Harbor. Backed by Hart Enterprises this time. Of course. They've tripled their offer. Diane continued. $450 million. Full control, but they're willing to retain the brand name. I looked around the table at faces that had once been full of faith, but now carried fatigue. They wanted safety, a payday, closure. Leo cleared his throat. We said we'd never sell. Diane's tone sharpened. Principals don't pay salaries. I leaned back. Neither does surrender. The silence that followed was long and thick. After the meeting, Leo followed me outside. They're going to push hard. We can't keep saying no forever. I turned to him. You sound like them. He sighed. I'm tired, Ava. I've given this company 5 years of my life. I love what we built, but I don't want to burn out defending it. His words cut deeper than he realized. I never asked you to get burned out for it, I said quietly. No, he replied. But you never asked if I wanted to live for anything else. Then he walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway that suddenly felt too wide. That evening I drove out of the city away from the noise. The highway stretched endlessly, the sky painted with the last traces of sun. I ended up at a lake I hadn't visited in years, the place where I'd first coded the skeleton of ClickNest on a borrowed laptop. I sat by the water, wind brushing my hair, and thought about every sacrifice along the way, the friends lost, the sleepless nights, the distance from my family, the cost of the crown. Hayato's words echoed again. Rest isn't bought, it's built. And I realized I had built everything but that. The next morning, I made a decision. I called the board. "We're not selling," I said before they could speak. "Not for 450 million, not for 4 billion. ClickNest isn't just a company anymore, it's a culture. And if any of you want out, I'll buy your shares myself." They were stunned. One of them laughed nervously. "With what money?" "With the same money they said I'd never make," I replied, then ended the call. By noon, half the board had agreed to stay. The others resigned. Leo came to see me that afternoon. "You really did it," he said, shaking his head. "You scared them off. I freed them," I said. "And maybe us, too." He looked at me for a long time. "What now?" "Now," I said, "we rebuild peace into the structure." We spent the next weeks restructuring ClickNest. Smaller teams, remote hubs, wellness days, community reinvestment. I turned down every new investor, every flashy offer. Instead, we focused on meaning. And something incredible happened. Revenue stabilized. Users increased. Employee turnover dropped to 0. People started calling ClickNest the company that refused to sell its soul. One night, after a long day, I got an email from Hayato. "You've learned the hardest rule. Money follows peace, not pressure. The crown was never yours to wear. It was yours to put down." I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. That weekend, I finally visited home. My dad was sitting on the porch, the newspaper folded beside him. He looked up as I approached. "You won," he said simply. "No," I said. "I just stopped fighting." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that's the real win." We sat there in silence, the wind warmed the world soft again. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't building anything. I was just being. And in that stillness, I finally understood what Hayato meant all along. Wealth wasn't the number in my account. It was this moment. The peace that couldn't be bought, only earned. The package arrived on a Wednesday morning, unmarked, no sender. My assistant dropped it on my desk between 2 stacks of reports. It was small, wrapped in brown paper, the kind that crinkled with age. Inside was a wooden box. I knew it before I even opened it, the silver pen. Hayato's pen. The one I'd returned to him during our last meeting in Tokyo. But there was something new engraved on it this time. 3 words. Peace pays better. I sat back, my breath caught somewhere between nostalgia and disbelief. Beneath the pen was a note in his handwriting: "The student becomes the teacher when she stops chasing validation and starts teaching value. You are ready. Share what you've learned. HS." For a long time, I didn't move. The office buzzed faintly outside my door, but inside time froze. That same afternoon, Leo walked in holding a coffee. "What's that?" I showed him the pen. He smiled. "The legend lives." "It's more than that," I said. "It's a call to start something new." He raised an eyebrow. New, like what? I didn't answer right away. I turned the pen over in my hand, feeling its weight. Then I said, "It's time to teach others how to build without breaking." That night I drafted the outline for the Founders Collective, a mentorship network for women building businesses from passion, not pressure. I wanted to give them what I never had: a guide, a shield, a safe place to learn the truth about success. Within a week, the news spread. Applications poured in from everywhere: teachers, single moms, coders, artists, all wanting to learn how to create wealth that couldn't be stolen. During our first session, I stood in front of a camera, the silver pen clipped to my shirt pocket. When I started, I said I thought money was proof of worth. But wealth without peace is just another form of poverty. You don't have to chase success. If you live with purpose, it will chase you. The chat filled instantly. This is what we needed. Thank you for being real. As I spoke, I saw faces light up across the screen, women who had been told, "You'll never make money doing that the same way I once had." When the session ended, Leo came over, clapping softly. "You know, he said this might be bigger than ClickNest." I laughed. "It's not about being bigger, it's about deeper." But life had one more test waiting. The next morning, I received a message from Japan. It wasn't from Hayato this time, it was from his daughter. My dad left us peacefully 2 nights ago. He asked that you continue what he started. The world blurred for a second. I put the phone down, hands trembling. Later that evening, I walked to the rooftop of our office. The city glowed beneath me, endless and alive. I took the silver pen from my pocket and held it against the light. He built in silence, I whispered, but his echoes never stopped. Leo joined me quietly. You okay? I nodded. He's gone. He looked down, then said softly, he'd be proud. You've become what he saw in you. Maybe he was right, or maybe I was still becoming. That night I booked a flight to Tokyo. I didn't tell anyone, not even Leo. I needed to stand where it all began, by the koi pond, under the rain-soaked maple tree. When I arrived, the garden was exactly as I remembered. Still, sacred, eternal. His daughter met me there, her resemblance to him uncanny. She handed me an envelope sealed with red wax. He wrote this for you before he left, she said. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence written in his steady hand. When you teach others to build peace, your wealth multiplies beyond measure. I felt tears fill my eyes, but they weren't of grief. They were grateful. As I stood there, I saw the koi moving in slow, effortless circles. The same lesson Hayato had shown me years before: flow, don't force. Before leaving, I placed the silver pen beside the pond. Then I took it back again. He had trusted me with it twice. Now it was my turn to carry it forward. When I returned to the States, something in me had shifted. I was no longer the founder fighting for survival or the daughter fighting for validation. I was the bridge between what money could buy and what meaning could build. At the next Founders Collective Summit, I told Hayato's story. How he built empires in silence, how he gave without attachment, and how he believed that true success was simply peace, multiplied. The audience was silent when I finished. Then, one by one, they stood and began to clap, not the wild kind of applause that craves noise, but the steady rhythm of gratitude. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She held out a small notebook, her eyes bright. Can you sign this? She asked. Not with your name, with one piece of advice? I smiled and took out the silver pen. I wrote, build what you can sleep beside. That's real wealth. When I handed it back, she whispered, thank you. I think I finally understand. And as I watched her walk away, I realized something profound. The pen wasn't a symbol of success, it was a relay baton. Hayato had passed it to me, and I would pass it again someday. Not to the loudest or the richest, but to the one who understood what he meant when he said, patience compounds faster than profit. The silver glinted under the lights, warm and alive. For the first time in years, I felt no fear of endings. Only the quiet certainty that the story had begun again in every woman who picked up her own pen and started to write. The night before the Founders Collective's 1-year anniversary, I sat alone in the studio, lights dimmed, cameras off. The air smelled faintly of coffee and calm. On my desk, the silver pen lay beside my laptop, catching the glow of the city beyond the window. It had been a year since I'd turned down the buyout, since I'd chosen peace over power. ClickNest was thriving again, smaller, wiser, stronger. The collective had grown into a movement spanning 30 countries. Thousands of women were now building businesses not out of desperation, but out of joy. And yet, as I looked out at the skyline, I felt the ghost of that dinner years ago, the table, the tension, the words that started it all. You'll never make money online. I smiled to myself. The irony wasn't bitter anymore, it was sweet. The next morning, we hosted the anniversary live stream. Tens of thousands tuned in. I wore simple white, no designer labels, no corporate script. Just me, the pen, and a promise to close the circle. 3 years ago, I sat at a dinner table where someone told me I'd never make money online. Tonight, I want to show you what faith looks like when it compounds. The camera cut to a live screen share of our latest figures. $9,000, $1,000 in creator payouts. The chat exploded. Hearts, cheers, messages in every language. Leo, standing off camera, mouthed, 9 million. You did it. I smiled. No, I said softly. We did it. Then I leaned forward, eyes meeting the lens. But this isn't revenge. This is redemption. Because the real win wasn't proving them wrong, it was proving us right. When the stream ended, the room erupted in applause, but I stayed seated, still breathing in the weight of it all. Later that evening, I received a text from an unknown number. Your dad watched. He didn't say much, just smiled. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove to my parents' house. It had been months since I'd last visited. The porch light was on, as always. My mother opened the door before I could knock. You saw it, I asked. She nodded, eyes bright with tears. He did too. Inside, my dad sat in the same armchair, older now, softer somehow. He looked up as I approached. $9 million, he said quietly. You made your point. I smiled faintly. It was never about the point, Dad. It was about the process. He nodded, then chuckled. And I thought the internet was just for cat videos. We both laughed. For the first time in years, it wasn't awkward. It was healing. As I got up to leave, he said, Ava. I turned. I'm proud of you. The words landed like sunlight after rain. Driving back home, the world felt different. Not louder, not brighter, just enough. When I reached my apartment, Leo was waiting outside, leaning against the wall with 2 mugs of tea. How'd it go? He asked. I think I said I finally got my family back. He smiled. And your peace? I looked out over the city lights. It's not something you get. It's something you choose every day. He nodded slowly. So what now? I picked up the silver pen from my pocket, turning it between my fingers. Now I'll pass it on. The next morning, I hosted a small event at ClickNest headquarters. Among the attendees was a young woman named Maya, a single mom who'd built her own digital design brand through the collective. She reminded me of myself at 25, scared, hungry, unstoppable. After the event, I called her aside and handed her the pen. What's this? She asked. It's a promise, I said. To keep building from peace, not pressure. To help others do the same. You'll know when it's time to pass it on. She stared at it, then at me. I don't think I'm ready. I smiled. Neither was I. As she left, I felt something ease inside me, a release I hadn't realized I'd been waiting for. That evening, Leo and I walked out to the balcony overlooking the skyline. The city shimmered like circuitry again, alive and infinite. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd taken that deal? He asked. Sometimes I admitted. But then I remember that peace isn't bought with numbers. It's earned with choices. He raised his mug in a silent toast. To choices, then. To freedom, I said. The night stretched long and quiet. Somewhere far away, someone new was holding that silver pen, dreaming their own dream into existence. I thought of Hayato, of my dad, of the girl who once sat at that dinner table afraid her life would never begin. And I whispered to her across time, you made it. The wind carried the words out into the dark, and I swear for a moment I could hear Hayato's voice echo back calm, certain, eternal. You built wealth that cannot be stolen. I stood there until the city lights blurred into stars, until the hum of traffic became the rhythm of peace. That was the real revenge, not the money, not the success, but the quiet knowing that I had turned pain into purpose and inherited nothing but freedom. And as the clock struck midnight, I realized something simple. Something I wished I could have told my dad years ago. I didn't make $9 million. I made peace, and it was worth every cent.